Order! Order! You are an incorrigible delinquent at times. Behave yourself, man!
Now, Tom Watson, he's Deputy Leader of the Labour Party, was in front of the Commons Home Affairs Select Committee yesterday, answering questions about his role in promoting an historic rape allegation made against former Home Secretary, the late Liam Britton. The committee also heard from a senior detective who had been in charge of that investigation, and reading from his decision log, he said the rape allegation amounted to a, quote, baseless witch hunt. Let's take a look.
At this stage, I do not feel that the arrest or interview of Lord Britton is a proportionate response. The matter is over 40 years old, the offence is not clear-cut. The additional witnesses do not support Lord Britton's presence at the time. The victim is sure of the identification from a certificate in his flat, but I am still not convinced that the offence is made out. There is no right of anonymity for persons arrested for sexual offences. Furthermore, there is considerable media intrusion regarding arrestees. At the moment, Lord Britton is of interest in other aspects of a parallel investigation, and to arrest or interview him now would, I feel, jeopardise any potential inquiries, as this would be nothing more than a baseless witch hunt.
Do you regret using the words about someone, presumably who you've never met, that they are as close to evil as any human being could be?
I do regret using that phrase. Let me just give you clarification on that. That was not a phrase that I used. It was an alleged victim that used that phrase, but that wasn't Jane.
No.
But I do regret using that emotive language. I shouldn't have done, and I am sincerely sorry for repeating it. It was unnecessary.
Because, of course, to the family of Lord Britton, and indeed, I'm not sure whether this was used when he was alive originally. To him, it's not very nice to hear those words.
It wasn't used when he was alive, but yes, I am sincerely sorry for the hurt caused to Lady Britton for repeating that phrase.
We're joined now by the Labour MP Simon Janchuk. He's been a campaigner on allegations of historic sexual abuse. DCI Settle was the man in charge of this investigation. Very early on, he decided there was really no case to answer. He made that clear. Tom Watson continued to urge further investigation for the police not to give up. DCI Settle says it was a baseless witch hunt. How much does that harm Mr. Watson's reputation?
I don't think it harms it too much. DCI Settle also said that Tom Watson had been successful in help prosecute 3 cases, and I think that's something of a success. I think we have to acknowledge that Tom Watson is a campaigning MP. He's had a lot of success on a whole range of issues, and I would rather have an MP like Tom who campaigns hard on these issues. I don't deny that he got some things wrong. I think he's right to apologise to Lady Britton.
But even if
got a lot right as well.
I know he's got stuff right too. We'll come on to that. Yeah. But even that, if that campaign results in, quote, a baseless witch hunt, that doesn't matter?
Well, that's DCI Settle's opinion of it.
He was in charge of the investigation.
And I think it says more about the Metropolitan Police than it does about Tom Watson, actually. I campaign on these issues, as does Tom Watson. He's been very helpful and supportive to me in some of the campaigns that I've been doing around these issues. And it's up to the agencies to take note of what's being said to them by politicians. But at the end of the day, it's up to DCI Settle and his senior officers to decide whether what's being said to them by politicians should be acted on or not. So it says more about the Metropolitan Police than it does about Tom Watson.
We learned at the weekend that the Metropolitan Police were frightened to call off the investigation into Liam Britton because of they were frightened of what the media would say and what the public would say. That's no way for a police service to behave, is it?
Oh, no, it isn't. No, and it's for the Metropolitan Police to get it right. I've put forward a number of allegations that have been followed up by Greater Manchester Police, and I think they've acted differently to what the Metropolitan Police would do. But let me say, Andrew, we shouldn't throw the baby out with the bathwater. There is no doubt about it that there was child sexual abuse going on in and around Westminster back back in the 1980s, and there's lots of evidence for that. There are serious allegations against Lord Janner, allegations against Cyril Smith, allegations against Sir Peter Morrison, the former MP for Chester. There's lots of information from MI5 that's already been published to show that there were concerns about it. There are 29 investigations by the IPCC, the Independent Police Complaints Commission, looking at corruption within the police force in relation to these issues.
No one is arguing that child abuse isn't a serious problem. No one is arguing that child abuse isn't to be found in all sections of society. It therefore follows that there must be child abuse of some sort has gone on in Westminster and is still going on. But that's not what Tom Watson claimed in October 2012. He said there was clear intelligence of a VIP network of child abuse reaching into Parliament and to 10 Downing Street. That's entirely different. A network.
Yes.
What's the evidence for that?
Well, I'm not here to unpick everything that Tom has said or investigated.
Do you have evidence for that?
Oh, well, what I'm clearly saying is that there is no doubt about it, that there have been paedophiles, as I've said.
Which we're not arguing about.
No,
that's
right.
the case.
Well, but we also know, and Cyril Smith is a case in point, somebody who I've investigated, these people act in networks. They're very informal networks.
But do we have evidence?
Networks. Well, we certainly do in relation to Cyril Smith.
We have evidence
and
he was of child abuse. I understand that. But do we have evidence that he was part of a Westminster-based VIP network?
No, that's not necessarily the point I'm making. But
the point Tom Watson was making.
But the point I am making is that these people who commit these types of crimes act through very loose networks and often know each other. And we know that not just from politicians who've been paedophiles, but from others who are paedophiles.
But you've been you have done some very strong work in this area, particularly on the Cyril Smith case. You've been a lot more careful, though, than Tom Watson. A former social worker, Chris Fay, has been feeding allegations to Mr. Watson about Mr. Lord Britton and about others too. There are many question marks about Chris Fay, convicted fraudster, I believe, politically motivated as well. Mr. Watson's used stuff he's been given by Mr. Fay. You've not.
Well, I've met Chris Fay asked to meet me many months ago, and I met him and I found him wholly unconvincing and didn't want to spend.
Well, you said wholly unbelievable and some sort of fantasist.
Well, yeah, that's right. And so I didn't bother.
It's his information that Tom Watson has used.
But listen, Tom will approach his subject in the way that he approached it, and he didn't just base, I don't think, the information that he had on one campaigner like Chris Fay. He put together a lot of information from different sources. But, you know, we can't get away from the point that he had this information and he did what a good MP should do, and that is present it to the agencies, to the authorities, for them to investigate. Now, he did that quite forcefully.
But he did that more than that. He stood up in Parliament at Prime Minister's questions and went national on it. He didn't just take these accusations, which he may have given more weight to than you have done. He may have thought the fact the man's a fantasist isn't irrelevant, though that would be an interesting argument to have, and give them to the proper authorities to say, I think you should investigate this. He grandstanded on this, based on the testimony of a man that you regard as a fantasist.
But to be fair to Tom, and we should be fair to him, he's done some excellent work campaigning on these issues, never mind on other issues. Okay. And on these issues, he's making that statement to Parliament based on, not just on Chris Fay, but on evidence and information from a whole range of different sources.
Just fine, on John Mann, another Labour MP, says that he has been handed a document that includes the names of alleged paedophiles with links to the establishment. Similar complaint or line that Tom Watson's been taking. It's believed he's referring to the Dickens dossier named after a Tory MP in 1984. Do you know what's in the Dickens dossier?
No, I don't know what's in it. By coincidence, I spoke to Louise Dickens this morning, Geoffrey Dickens' granddaughter, right. And we talked at some length about what might be in the dossier. But we don't really know until
because some people say it's just a pile of old press cuttings.
Well, it may well be. We have absolutely no idea. But at the same time, you can't help thinking that had people listened to Geoffrey Dickens more in the 1980s, perhaps there would have been less child sexual abuse committed between then and now.
Do you, Nigel Farage, believe that there is clear intelligence suggesting a powerful paedophile network linked to Parliament and Number 10?
I think it's extremely unlikely. I thought that right from the start. I agree with Simon. I mean, we want MPs to pick up issues and campaign on them. However, they've got to behave with a degree of discretion, and I think Tom Watson wildly overstepped the mark, and we should not have waited until yesterday for an apology. He should have apologised quite a lot sooner, in my opinion.
Right, but that's on the narrow, obviously important case of Liam Britton, and with the rape charge. It's not a charge, the rape accusation that was against Liam Britton. There are still investigations going on with Liam Britton, as with many others on the child abuse side. That's still being investigated. And so I just wondered, will Tom Watson, do you think, be vindicated that there is a network of paedophiles in Westminster?
I don't know any more than Simon does. I hope that it turns out not to be the case. I find it difficult to believe that something that was so extreme, it didn't just involve rape but murder. I find it difficult to believe that could have been kept quiet.
The work Tom Watson has done has resulted in a number of investigations which have resulted in child abusers being put in jail, which is obviously a huge plus. But none that has happened in is connected to a Westminster network. No one, to my knowledge, maybe you follow this more carefully, has been arrested or charged based on the so-called clear intelligence of 3 years ago in that regard. Is that correct?
No, I think that's probably right. But a number of the suspects, a number of the alleged perpetrators have died. I mean, so Cyril Smith would be a case in point, wouldn't it? Sir Peter Morrison would be a case in point. These were there's a case against Lord Janner that's going forward at the moment in terms of allegations of abuse.
But that's not down to Tom Watson, as you well know.
No, it isn't. But the police, I suspect, are still investigating these. They've combined some of the operations that they were carrying out. There's been some rationalisation of it. But let's see where it leads us.
OK. Thank you very much for talking about these things. It's a difficult subject.
But before we let you go, just on another matter, Simon Danchuk, fears have been expressed by some of your parliamentary colleagues that there could be moves since Jeremy Corbyn and John McDonnell have taken the leadership of the Labour Party to deselect them further down the line. Is there anything like that going on in your constituency, do you believe? Oh,
no, certainly not in my constituency. I have the full support of the constituency Labour Party. I met with them the other week. I met with my local chairman. I think they're very supportive.
Right. I mean, there is apparently a petition that has been put together in your constituency with a large number of signatures calling for that. Does that worry you?
No, the petition has been put together by what you might call Corbynistas, none of whom live in my constituency, and I think the people that have signed it are from right across the country, and very few, if any, are actually from Rochdale.
So you're not worried?
I'm not worried.
Are you going to go on writing these articles in the Mail on Sunday, castigating the party
leadership?
No,
that is...
I mean, they're great reading. I'm enjoying them.
Well, I'm glad you're enjoying them. I'm sure the Mail on Sunday appreciate the advert. But I'm right. I'm trying to get a message out there, a constructive message about how Labour can get it right. Just like Jeremy has written for the Morning Star. I don't know what the readership of the Morning Star is, but just like he's written for them.
Growing.
And this is the new politics, and I'm sure Jeremy appreciates the contribution that I'm making.
Thanks.
If you tolerate this, then